The forest moon of Varus IV was beautiful in the morning light. Purple flowers covered the meadows like a soft blanket. The twin suns rose slowly over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the kind of place where people came to find peace, to raise families, and to forget about the troubles of the galaxy. 300 humans called this small colony home. They had built simple houses near the river, planted crops in the rich soil, and created a life far away from the busy cities of Earth. Among them were 62 children who attended the Varus Primary Learning Center, a small school built from local wood and stone. Commander Jack Morrison stood on his porch that morning, drinking coffee and watching the children walk to school. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. His job was to keep the colony safe, but there had never been any real danger here. The colony had a small security team of 20 people and a few old patrol ships. It was a quiet posting, and Jack liked it that way. At the medical center, Dr. Emma Price was already at work. She was a young doctor with short brown hair and a warm smile. Most of her patients came in with small problems, like cuts from farming tools or children with stomach aches from eating too many sweets. She had left a big hospital on Earth to come here because she wanted a simpler life. The children arrived at school just as the second sun cleared the horizon. Their teacher, a young woman named Grace, greeted them at the door. The youngest students were only 5 years old. The oldest were 12. They came from all the families in the colony, and they were the heart of this small community. Among them was a 6-year-old girl named Lily. She had bright red hair and loved to draw pictures of spaceships. Her dream was to become a pilot someday and explore the stars. That morning, she showed Grace a drawing she had made of a ship flying through a nebula. "This is wonderful, Lily," Grace said, kneeling down to look at the picture. "You have such a great imagination." Lily smiled and ran to her seat. The day began like any other day, with lessons about math and reading and the history of human space exploration. The children had no idea that their lives were about to change forever. Far away, in a dark chamber on the planet Korath, a plan was being set in motion. High Sovereign Vexillor sat on his throne, his reptilian eyes filled with anger. His species, the Korath, had recently lost a dispute with humanity over mining rights in a nearby asteroid belt. The Galactic Assembly had ruled in favor of the humans, and Vexillor had been humiliated. "The humans think they are so clever," he hissed to his generals. "They smile and talk about peace while they steal what belongs to us. They must be taught a lesson." One of his generals, a scarred warrior named Crothel, stepped forward. "What do you command, High Sovereign?" Vexillor's thin lips curled into a cruel smile. "I have found a human colony. It is small and weak, far from their military forces. They have children there. Many children." The generals exchanged glances. Even among the Korath, attacking children was considered extreme. But none of them dared to question their ruler. "We will take their young ones," Vexillor continued. "We will show the humans that their reach has limits. We will make them feel fear." Within hours, a Korath strike force of 5 warships left their home planet. They traveled through hyperspace, moving silently toward the unsuspecting colony on Varus IV. Back on the forest moon, the day continued peacefully. The children ate lunch in the schoolyard, playing games and laughing under the purple trees. Jack Morrison made his rounds, stopping to chat with farmers and check on the patrol ships. Emma Price treated a young boy who had scraped his knee while running. No one noticed the ships dropping out of hyperspace above their world. The attack came without warning. The first blast destroyed the communication array, cutting off the colony from the rest of human space. Jack Morrison heard the explosion and ran outside, his heart pounding. He looked up and saw 5 alien warships descending through the clouds. "Sound the alarm," he shouted to his team. "Get everyone to shelter. But it was already too late. Korath soldiers poured out of landing craft, their weapons firing at anyone who stood in their way. Jack tried to reach the school, but enemy troops blocked every path. He watched helplessly as soldiers surrounded the building where the children were hiding. Dawn, at the medical center, Emma heard the screams and grabbed the emergency kit. She ran toward the school, dodging plasma fire and falling debris. When she arrived, she found Grace lying on the ground, badly wounded. The young teacher had thrown herself in front of her students when the soldiers burst in. "The children," Grace whispered, blood on her lips. "They took the children." Emma held her hand as Grace took her last breath. Around her, the colony burned. Houses collapsed into flames. Bodies lay in the streets. The Korath soldiers showed no mercy to anyone who tried to stop them. Jack Morrison managed to reach the communication station. The main array was destroyed, but he found a small emergency beacon. With shaking hands, he activated it and recorded a message. "This is Commander Jack Morrison on Varus 4. We are under attack by Korath forces. They have taken our children. 62 children. Please send help. Please." He sent the message just before a Korath soldier found him and knocked him unconscious. The attack lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 112 colonists were dead. The survivors gathered in the ruins, too shocked to speak. They watched as the Korath ships rose into the sky, carrying their children away. On the lead ship, little Lily clutched her drawing of the spaceship. Tears streamed down her face as she looked out the window at her burning home. Around her, the other children cried and called for their parents. A Korath soldier walked past, looking at the frightened human children with cold eyes. He did not understand why his leaders wanted these small creatures. He did not know that by taking them, his species had just made the worst mistake in the history of the galaxy. The Korath left behind a message, broadcast on a loop from a small device in the center of the ruined colony. "This is the price of human arrogance." Emma Price found the device and stared at it for a long moment. Then she looked up at the stars where the ships had disappeared. "You have no idea what you have done," she whispered. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a small emergency beacon was traveling toward Earth, carrying news that would shake humanity to its core. The emergency beacon traveled through space for 47 hours. It passed through asteroid fields and around dead stars, carrying its terrible message toward Earth. When it finally reached Earth's Central Command, it was the middle of the night. Admiral Nora Walsh was not asleep. She was attending a diplomatic dinner with representatives from several alien species. They were celebrating a new trade agreement, and everyone was in good spirits. Nora was a woman of 53 years with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. She had commanded fleets in 3 different conflicts and was known for her calm under pressure. Her assistant rushed into the dining hall and whispered in her ear. Nora's face went pale. She excused herself and walked quickly to the communication room. Her heart beating fast. She read the message 3 times. 62 children taken. Over 100 colonists dead. Korath attack. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Wake up the Joint Chiefs. Contact the President. I want every admiral on a secure line in 1 hour." Within hours, the news spread across human space. Every colony, every station, every ship heard about what had happened on Varus 4. People gathered around screens to watch the footage from the colony's surviving cameras. They saw the attack. They saw children being dragged from their school. They saw parents dying while trying to protect their young ones. The reaction was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On Mars, workers left their factories and marched to the government buildings, demanding action. On the moon colonies, ship captains volunteered their vessels for military service. On distant research stations, scientists put down their tools and asked how they could help. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 43 species gathered in the Great Hall on the neutral planet of Nexus. The human ambassador, Daniel Cruz, stood before them. He was a quiet man who had spent 20 years building bridges between species. Today, his eyes burned with cold fury. "We have come to request the Assembly's support," he said. "The Korath Dominion has attacked a peaceful human colony. They have murdered innocent people. They have taken 62 children." The alien delegates murmured among themselves. The Korath representative, a tall reptilian named Siskel, rose to speak. "The humans have been pushing against our borders for years," he said smoothly. "This was a necessary response to their aggression. The children are safe and will be returned when humanity learns to respect our territory." Daniel Cruz stared at him for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but clear. "We do not negotiate for our children. We take them back." The assembly erupted in chaos. Several species warned humanity against starting a war. Others called for calm and diplomatic solutions. The Korath representative smiled, confident that the humans would not dare attack a species with a larger fleet. "Ambassador," Cruz simply turned and walked out of the hall. On Earth, President Catherine Hayes prepared to address all of human space. She was a grandmother herself, with 3 grandchildren who lived on a colony near Alpha Centauri. When she learned what had happened, she spent an hour alone in her office. When she emerged, her eyes were red, but her voice was made of steel. The broadcast reached every human in the galaxy. People stopped whatever they were doing to listen. "My fellow humans," she began. 3 days ago, a Korath strike force attacked our colony on Varus 4. They killed 112 of our people. They took 62 of our children. She paused, and billions of people held their breath. "To the Korath Dominion, I have a message. You have made a terrible mistake. You believed that our kindness was weakness. You believed that our patience was fear. You believed that because we prefer peace, we have forgotten how to make war." Her eyes seemed to look directly at every person watching. "You took our children. You will return them unharmed. Every single one of them. Or your species will become a warning that the galaxy will remember for 10,000 years." In homes and ships across human space, people nodded. Parents held their own children tighter. Veterans dusted off old uniforms. Young people walked into recruiting offices by the thousands. Admiral Walsh assembled the largest human fleet in history. 400 warships gathered at the staging point near Jupiter. 50,000 Marines checked their weapons and said goodbye to their families. The entire 7th Special Operations Division, the most elite soldiers humanity had ever produced, prepared for the most important mission of their lives. Among them was Captain Ben Cole. He was 34 years old, with brown hair and a scar on his chin from an old training accident. He had joined the Marines right out of school and had served with honor in several small conflicts. But this mission was personal. His 8-year-old niece, Sophie, was one of the children taken from VERIS-4. Ben had received the news while on leave, visiting his sister and her family. He had watched his sister collapse in grief. He had held her while she cried. Then he had kissed her forehead and promised her that he would bring Sophie home. "I don't care what it takes," he told his commanding officer. "I volunteer for the rescue team." The fleet prepared to depart. Before they left, Admiral Walsh made one final order. Every ship would fly the same banner, a black flag with a single white handprint in the center. It was an ancient human symbol, representing the protection of children. The message was clear. These were their children. Anyone who stood in the way would face the consequences. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, millions of humans watched and waited. Parents prayed. Children asked questions that their parents struggled to answer. The galaxy held its breath. On Korath Prime, High Sovereign Vexor received reports of the human mobilization. He laughed and dismissed his advisor's concerns. "Let them come," he said. "We have 600 ships. They cannot defeat us." He did not understand what he was facing. He saw numbers and weapons. He did not see the fury of a species united by something stronger than any army. He did not understand that every human on every ship, from the admirals to the lowest crew members, was thinking of those 62 children. He did not understand that humans have been fighting wars since before they had names for the stars, and he did not understand that for humans, there was no greater motivation than protecting their young. The fleet moved through hyperspace like a storm crossing the ocean. 400 ships, 50,000 Marines, and 62 reasons to fight until the very end. The hunt had begun. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Korath territory. 400 warships spread out in a massive formation, their weapons powered and ready. Admiral Nora Walsh stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Resolute, watching the tactical display. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're detecting the Korath defensive fleet. 600 ships positioned around their home planet." Nora nodded slowly. They were outnumbered, but numbers alone did not win battles. She had spent the entire journey studying Korath tactics, looking for weaknesses. She had found many. "Send the message," she ordered. "One final chance." The transmission was simple. Return the children unharmed. Surrender the officials responsible for the attack. Submit to Galactic Assembly oversight. There would be no second offer. High Sovereign Vexilor's response came within minutes. He appeared on the screen, his reptilian face twisted with contempt. "Foolish humans," he hissed. "You think you can threaten us? We have more ships. We have more soldiers. If you attack, we will destroy you, and then we will execute every one of your precious children." The screen went dark. Admiral Walsh closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, they were hard as stone. "All ships," she said, "begin the attack." The first battle lasted 19 hours. Human ships moved in patterns that confused the Korath commanders. They attacked from angles that should have been impossible. They sacrificed individual vessels to create openings for others. They fought with a fury that the Korath had never seen. The Korath relied on rigid formations and overwhelming force. They were strong and disciplined, but they could not adapt quickly. The humans exploited this weakness again and again. By the end of the first day, the Korath had lost 200 ships. The humans had lost 87, but more were coming. Reinforcement vessels arrived from human colonies. Some of them civilian ships quickly converted for combat. Volunteers came from everywhere, people who had left their normal lives to join the fight. A cargo ship captain named Paul Reeves had flown medical supplies for 30 years. Now his ship carried wounded soldiers back from the front lines. A scientist named Linda Moore had been studying distant galaxies. Now she worked as a combat engineer, repairing damaged weapon systems. An elderly veteran named Frank Cooper had retired a decade ago. Now he commanded a small frigate, leading attacks with the energy of a man half his age. They all came for the same reason. 62 children needed to come home. While the battle raged in space, Captain Ben Cole led his team toward the planet's surface. They traveled in a stealth ship designed to slip past enemy detection. His team consisted of 20 of the best soldiers in the human military. Each of them had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not survive. The ship entered the atmosphere, under cover of a massive explosion that distracted the Korath sensors. They landed in a forest 5 kilometers from the capital city, where intelligence said the children were being held, then gathered his team in the darkness. "The children are in a detention facility in the eastern part of the city," he said quietly. "We go in fast, we grab them, and we get out. No mistakes. No hesitation. Those kids are counting on us. They moved through the forest like shadows, avoiding Karth patrols and security drones. The city was in chaos, with civilians running through the streets as explosions lit up the sky. The humans used this confusion to their advantage. The detention facility was a gray building surrounded by high walls and guard towers. Ben studied it through his scope and counted the enemies. 40 guards outside. Unknown number inside. Heavy weapons on the roof. Heavy resistance, whispered his second-in-command, a woman named Kate Brooks. We'll need a distraction. Ben nodded and contacted the fleet. We need fire support. Target the military base 3 blocks north. Draw their attention away. Minutes later, missiles rained down on the military base. The ground shook with explosions. Guards rushed toward the attack, leaving the detention facility less protected. Now, Ben said, move. The team attacked from 3 directions at once. Ben led the main group through the front gate, fighting through guards with precise shots. Kate's team climbed the walls and took out the rooftop weapons. A third group blasted through a side entrance. Inside, the facility was a maze of corridors and locked doors. The sounds of battle echoed off the walls. Ben moved quickly, checking each room, searching for the children. He found them on the second floor. 62 children huddled in a large cell, guarded by a dozen Karth soldiers. When the soldiers saw the humans, they raised their weapons. Ben did not hesitate. He moved faster than he had ever moved in his life. His team followed, taking down guards with perfect accuracy. In 30 seconds, it was over. The children stared at the soldiers with wide, frightened eyes. Many of them were crying. Ben knelt down and removed his helmet so they could see his face. It's okay, he said gently. We're here to take you home. Your parents are waiting for you. A small girl with red hair stepped forward. It was Lily. She had not spoken since the attack, but she recognized something in the soldier's kind eyes. Are you a hero? She whispered. Ben smiled through his tears. No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who couldn't leave you here. He picked her up carefully, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. The other soldiers gathered the children, speaking softly to calm their fears. The extraction was difficult. Karth reinforcements arrived, and Ben's team had to fight their way back to the landing zone. 3 Marines died holding a corridor so the children could escape. They gave their lives without hesitation, their last thoughts of the young ones they were saving. The stealth ship rose into the sky, carrying 62 children toward safety. Behind them, the battle continued to rage. But the most important mission was complete. On the medical ship where the children were taken, doctors and nurses worked through the night. Most of the children had minor injuries. Some had been hurt badly. All of them were traumatized by what they had experienced. Sophie, Ben's niece, ran to him when she saw him. He held her tight and let his tears fall freely. I knew you would come, she said. I told the other kids. I said the grown-ups would come for us. Ben kissed her forehead. Always, he promised. We will always come for you. In the cold darkness of space, the battle continued. But the children were safe. And now, the humans could focus on making sure nothing like this ever happened again. The children were safe aboard the medical ships, surrounded by doctors and nurses who treated them with the greatest care. Admiral Nora Walsh received the news with relief, but her work was not finished. She stood on the bridge of the Resolute and looked at the planet below. High Sovereign Vexillor had threatened to kill the children if humanity attacked. He had failed to keep his promise. Now he would face the consequences of his actions. Admiral Walsh sent one final transmission to the Karth leadership. Your hostages are no longer in your hands, she said calmly. We offer you this last chance to surrender. Hand over all officials responsible for the attack on our colony. Pay reparations to every family who lost someone. Allow the Galactic Assembly to oversee your military. Accept these terms, and this war ends today. Vexler's response came quickly. He appeared on the screen, his reptilian eyes blazing with anger. You think this changes anything? He snarled. We still have 400 ships. We will crush you and take those children back. You have only delayed the inevitable. The transmission ended. Admiral Walsh turned to her officers. He made his choice. Begin the operation. What followed would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the 18 days. The human fleet did not simply attack the Korth. They dismantled their entire military with surgical precision. Every action was calculated to cause maximum damage to military targets while avoiding unnecessary civilian casualties. The humans were not interested in revenge against innocent Korth citizens. They wanted to make sure no Korth military could ever threaten human children again. On the first day, human ships destroyed every orbital defense platform around Korth Prime. The Korth fleet tried to stop them. But the humans moved too fast, their tactics too unpredictable. By the end of the day, the skies above the Korth homeworld belonged to humanity. On the third day, human marines landed on the planet's surface. They targeted military bases, weapons factories, and command centers. They moved through the cities with care, warning civilians to stay indoors and treating prisoners with respect. The Korth soldiers who surrendered were kept safe. Those who fought were defeated quickly. The Galactic Assembly watched in stunned silence. Many species had believed humans were a peaceful race, more interested in trade and exploration than warfare. They were learning the truth. Humans were indeed peaceful, but they had never forgotten how to fight. Their history was written in blood, and when they needed to, they could be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Ambassador Daniel Cruz addressed the assembly during the crisis. We do not enjoy what we are doing, he said quietly. We take no pleasure in destruction. But understand this clearly. The Korth took our children. They plan to use them as tools of fear. Every species in this room has young ones. Every species in this room would do the same if their children were taken. No one argued with him. On the seventh day, the Korth fleet made a desperate counterattack. 300 ships charged at the human formation, hoping to break through by sheer force. It was a terrible mistake. Admiral Walsh had been waiting for this moment. She had positioned her ships in a pattern that looked weak in the center, but was actually a trap. When the Korth charged, human ships closed in from all sides, cutting the enemy fleet into smaller groups and destroying them piece by piece. By the end of the battle, only 100 Korth ships remained. The rest were drifting wreckage. On the 10th day, human forces captured the largest shipyard in Korth space. Engineers moved through the facility, disabling weapons and equipment. They did not destroy everything, only what could be used for war. Civilian technology was left untouched. High Sovereign Vexler watched his empire crumble from his palace. His generals begged him to surrender, but he refused. His pride would not allow him to admit defeat. He ordered more attacks, more resistance, but nothing worked. The humans were everywhere, their ships appearing from nowhere, their soldiers moving through his cities like ghosts. On the 12th day, the last major Korth military base fell. Human marines raised their flag over the ruins, not as conquerors, but as a warning. The black banner with the white handprint flew in the alien wind, reminding everyone of why this war had begun. On the 15th day, Vexler's own generals finally acted. They had watched their military destroyed. They had seen their people suffer because of one ruler's foolish pride. They could take no more. A group of senior officers entered the palace and arrested the High Sovereign. He screamed and fought, but he was powerless. His guards, who had once been loyal, stepped aside and let him be taken. A new interim government was formed that night. Their first action was to contact Admiral Walsh. We wish to surrender. The new leader, a female Korth named Israel, said. We ask for mercy for our people. They did not choose this war. Admiral Walsh looked at her for a long moment. She thought of the children who had been taken. She thought of the colonists who had died. She thought of the Marines who had given their lives in the rescue. Then she nodded. "We accept your surrender," she said. "Our terms are as follows: complete disarmament of your military, reparations to every human family affected by your attack, permanent monitoring by the Galactic Assembly. Any future aggression against human civilians will be met with a response that makes the last 18 days look merciful." These are all about her head. We accept. The war was over. In the days that followed, human ships withdrew from Korath space. They did not occupy the planet or take territory. They did not demand tribute or servitude. They simply left, having accomplished what they came to do. But the message they left behind would last forever. The Galactic Assembly formally condemned the Korath attack and supported the human response. Several species quietly adjusted their diplomatic policies, making sure they would never find themselves in conflict with humanity. The Korath, once a proud military power, began the long process of rebuilding as a peaceful nation under strict oversight. And throughout the galaxy, a new saying spread among all species: never touch a human child. Never. Not even if you think you can win. Because you cannot. Admiral Walsh returned home to a hero's welcome. But she did not feel like celebrating. She had done what needed to be done. But war was never something to celebrate. As she walked off her ship, she thought of the children who were now safely back with their families. That was the only victory that mattered. 6 months had passed that the children of Varys IV came home. The galaxy had moved on to other news, other concerns. But for the families of those 62 children, every day was still part of the healing process. The colony on Varys IV had been rebuilt. New houses stood where the old ones had burned. The school was open again, with a beautiful memorial garden outside to honor those who had died during the attack. Purple flowers grew around the stone that bore the names of the 112 colonists who had lost their lives. Lily walked past the memorial every morning on her way to class. She was 7 now, her red hair longer than before. She still loved to draw pictures of spaceships, but now her drawings included something new. Soldiers with kind eyes who came to rescue children from the darkness. The nightmares still came sometimes. On those nights, she would wake up crying, and her mother would hold her until the fear went away. But the nightmares were coming less often now. The therapists who visited the colony said that was a good sign. Healing takes time, they explained. It cannot be rushed. Dr. Emma Price had left Varys IV after the attack. The memories were too painful for her to stay, but she had found a new purpose. She opened a special center on Earth, dedicated to helping children who had experienced trauma. She named it the Grace Center, after the young teacher who had died protecting her students. Children came to the center from all over human space. Some had survived accidents. Others had lost parents in various tragedies. A few, like the children from Varys IV, had been victims of violence. Emma and her team helped them all, using gentle methods to rebuild their sense of safety and trust. Lily's best friend Sophie visited the center once. Her Uncle Ben had brought her there when the nightmares were at their worst. Sophie had been afraid of the dark, afraid of strange sounds, afraid of being alone. After several weeks of treatment, she began to improve. Captain Ben Cole had received many awards for his role in the rescue. The Medal of Valor hung on his wall at home, next to photographs of his team. 3 of those photographs had black ribbons on them, honoring the Marines who had died holding the corridor so the children could escape. Ben had been offered promotions, important positions, command of larger forces. He had turned them all down. Instead, he requested a simple assignment near his sister's home so he could visit Sophie whenever he'd leave. He had made a promise to bring her home, and now he made another promise to be there as she grew up. On the anniversary of the rescue, the surviving members of his team gathered at a small ceremony. They did not give speeches or seek attention. They simply stood together in silence, remembering their fallen friends and the reason they had fought. They would be proud, Kate Brooks said quietly. The kids are okay? That's what matters. Ben nodded. That's all that ever mattered. Ambassador Daniel Cruz had returned to his work at the Galactic Assembly. The other species treated him differently now. There was a new respect in their eyes, and perhaps a little fear. He did not mind the fear. It meant they understood. 1 year after the attack, he addressed the full assembly. It was not a speech of triumph or threats. It was something else entirely. What happened with the Korath was a tragedy, he began. Lives were lost on both sides. Families were torn apart. A peaceful colony was destroyed. We do not celebrate what we were forced to do. We mourn it. The alien delegates listened in silence. But I want every species here to understand something about humanity. We are not conquerors. We do not seek empire or dominion over others. We offer friendship, trade, and cooperation to all who want it. We have explored the stars not to dominate, but to learn and grow together with our galactic neighbors. He paused, his eyes moving across the hall. However, our children are sacred to us. They represent everything we are and everything we hope to become. They are our future, our hope, our reason for building a better galaxy. If you threaten them, if you harm them, you will face not a government's response, but the wrath of an entire species. And that is something you cannot defeat, because it is driven by love. The assembly hall was completely silent. 43 species sat motionless, processing his words. We hope this never happens again, Daniel continued. We hope that this terrible chapter is closed forever. But if any species ever considers harming our children, remember the 18 days. Remember the Korath. And choose a different path. He returned to his seat. No one spoke for a long time in the years that followed. Not a single attack was made against human children anywhere in the galaxy. The black banner with the white handprint was retired and placed in museums on 100 worlds. It became a symbol recognized by every species. These are human children, and they are protected. The Korath slowly rebuilt their society under Galactic Assembly oversight. Izaral, the interim leader who had surrendered, worked to create a new culture that rejected violence and aggression. It was not easy. Many Korath still resented what had happened. But the younger generation, those who had grown up after the war, began to see things differently. One day, a Korath diplomat visited the Grace Center on Earth. She brought a gift for Dr. Emma Price, a painting made by Korath children, showing human and Korath young ones playing together under an alien sky. We want to teach our children a different way, the diplomat said. We hope that someday our species can be forgiven. Emma looked at the painting for a long time. Then she hung it in the center's main hallway, where everyone could see it. Forgiveness takes time, she said. But so does healing. And both are possible. Back on Varus 4, Lily finished another drawing. This one showed a ship flying through a field of stars, with a banner flying from its mast, a black flag with a white handprint. Her teacher looked at the drawing and smiled. That's beautiful, Lily. What does the flag mean? Lily looked up with bright eyes. It means we are protected, she said. It means nobody can hurt us. It means the grown-ups will always come for us. Her teacher felt tears forming in her eyes. She knelt down and hugged the little girl. Yes, she whispered. Always. Outside, the twin suns of Varus 4 shone down on the rebuilt colony. Children played in the purple meadows, their laughter filling the air. Parents watched them with smiles on their faces, grateful for every moment. And somewhere among the stars, On ships and stations in distant worlds, humanity continued its journey through the galaxy. They were explorers, scientists, artists, and dreamers. They were kind and curious and peaceful, but they never forgot the lesson of the 18 days, and neither did anyone else. The children were sacred. The children were protected. And heaven help anyone foolish enough to forget it.